Good morning as we go to the Chitas of today. Today is Wednesday, the fourth reading in the portion of Vayakhel. We're holding on chapter 36, verse number 8. So this continues the actual building of the Mishkan, and the Torah tells us exactly whatever God commanded, that's what the Jewish people did. Vayasu kol chacham leiv va'isa hamlacha, and all the wise-hearted people are performers of the work. As a Mishkan, they made the Mishkan and the curtains, sheish mazda, which was made of twisted fine linen, with chelas vargaman, and of blue and purple and crimson wool. V'salah shani, and of Keruvim Ma'aseh, they were made cherubim design, as we mentioned, that there were two designs on either side of them. He made them. The length of one yeriah was 28 cubits. 28 cubits, the length of each yeriah. And each yeriah, each curtain, was the 4 cubits in its width. And this was the 10 cubits, the 10 yeriahs. Remember that he made 10 yeriahs, 10 curtains that were sewn together 5 and 5. And then he joined the 5 of these, sewed the 5 of them together. One and he connected the other 5 curtains one with the other. So now he had 2 curtains, each one made up of 5. Verse 10. Then he connected verse 11. Then he made loops of blue wool at the edge of one of the curtain. And then he made loops on the edge of the other curtain of 5. 50 loops on the edge of one curtain, and 50 loops on the second curtain. Magbilos, halulois, and they were facing one another. Each loop was facing another. And now that he made 50 loops on one side and 50 loops on the other side, and then he made 50 golden clasps. And then loop to loop, he would connect through this golden clasps. And now you had one big covering. And so the Mishkan became one. Once there was a covering over the Mishkan, this was the first covering. Now you had a covering over the Mishkan. That was the covering of beauty in the Mishkan. So you looked in the Mishkan, you looked up to the roof, you saw the beautiful tapestry of wool and linen and gold, etc. And there were pictures, as it says, there were picture of a lion on one side and a picture of an eagle on the other. Right. Then he made another covering. Then he made a curtain of goats here for the tent over the Mishkan. This was a covering for the elements, for the rain. And he made Ashte Osiris. This was, the previous was 10. This was 11. Not only was it 11, but it was also longer because it covered everything. This covered the entire Mishkan. The only thing you saw was the Adonim, was the sockets on the bottom. So the length of the curtain was 30 cubits. The other one was 28. It was still the same width of 4 amis in each cubit, but it was 11 instead of 10. So it had an extra 4 cubits, which one covered the front of the Mishkan, 1 cubit in the front, and 2 cubits in the front and 2 cubits in the back. So it's the same measurement of 4 cubits, its width, for the 11 curtains. Then he took 5 of the curtains. He connected them together, make it one. He took the 6 other ones, made it as one. And he did exactly the same thing. Verse 17. Then he made 50 loops on one curtain that was put together by 5. He put 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that was the second group that was made of 6. And then this was not made out of gold. The clasps were not made out of gold. He made 50 copper clasps. These are made out of copper. To connect the oil to be one. And now, in essence, now once you covered the Mishkan with this dark color, was like a darkish color of goat's hair, now the Mishkan was totally covered. You didn't see anything from the outside. You didn't see the beautiful curtain, the roof, the beautiful top curtain. You didn't see all the gold. Everything was covered. And that's why he made another cover, a third cover, which is only the top of the Mishkan. He made a covering over the tent on the top of the cover. And that was the machlekes. Was it made out of one, or was it 2 pieces? Argument in the Gemara, if you remember. So this was made out of ram skins, dyed red, and also it was made out of oides tchoshim. They were made out of the skins of a tachash. Tachash was a animal that was there only for the time. That was a beautiful, like a peacock kind of animal that had beautiful colors, and that was the top of the Mishkan that they was put on this top. So the beauty of the top was a beautiful covering. That completes the Chumash of today. Now I'll go to the Tanya of the day. And we are beginning chapter 31 of Tanya. And chapter 29 and 30, the Alter Rebbe explained to us the concept of a leiv nishbar, of a broken heart. How we must bring about humility to our existence. But as anything, when a person breaks himself, and a person, as he says in the ending of the previous chapter, he says, Yeshval ruach, that a person needs to be contrite and be nothing to everybody else. This can have a negative effect on a person. You have to be very careful that he doesn't do it totally in a way that it brings him to atzvus, sadness, melancholy, depression. That's not the point, Alter Rebbe. Alter Rebbe is going to be express this concept. We are not looking for depression. We are not even looking for a concept. A person should feel like he's nothing. Everybody's important. A person should be humble. Should always have humility. Even if you know who you are, and you know your strengths, and you know your quality, which every person should know, he should still be humble. He should still have humility. And as the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, this is chapter 31 of Tanya. Even if dwelling long and deeply on the above-mentioned manners, in the chapter 29 and 30 of Tanya, for an hour or two, which is to be lowly of spirit, to be lowly of spirit and contrite of heart, Yavil de Atzvus leads one to profound depression. He should not be pictured, not be worried. Even though depression derives from the realm of klippas, noiga, kedusha, atzvus, depression never comes from holiness. Why? Kedusha, because in the realm of holiness, It says, the verse says, strength and gladness is in his place. Where there's holiness, there is strength and gladness. And furthermore, says the presence of God only is man's joy. And same joy is according to the study of the Jewish law. God resides in a place of happiness. So here I said that there has to be a little bit of contriteness, and there's got to be a little bit of sadness, and maybe also even a little bit of when I put myself down and I know who I really am, and I know my negative. So therefore, I really know that I'm not so great, and maybe I have sins, and I need to, work on myself. Well, that's so special. That might bring to a concept of depression, a little bit of depression, because a person should be a little bit depressed who he is, and that he cannot fight with his Yetzer Hara, and he seems like his evil inclination has got a little bit the best of him. Any depression that comes from the realm of Klippas Noiga, except that if the depression is due to spiritual matters, he will the Shemaya. Again, it's not depressed because he has no money, or he's depressed because he thinks that the God is nicer to other people than him, or he's depressed, he thinks that he's nothing, he's a nobody, no accomplishment in life. What most depression comes from. We're talking about depression of a spiritual stance, that is disconnection from God, and that he's not a tzaddik, and that he's not this holy individual he thinks he is. That it stems from the good contained in Klippas Noiga. That's a good little bit. That's good. Everybody should feel the truth that he's far away from God, that he needs to be close to God. Even Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to be close to God. We should all want to be close to God, because you cannot, how close you think you are, you're still far from God. How close you are, everybody thinks he's further from God. That's even King David said, my soul is thirsty for you. I'm so far from you. So that's good. We should all feel that we need to be closer to God. In one of the Hayom Yoms, the Rebbe writes, the quality, it says, a person should always be happy with what he has. That's a very good quality in the physical world, but not in the spiritual world. A person should never be happy with what he has in a spiritual world. He should always want more, because a person can never say, I have spirituality. I've got. That's what the Mishnah says. A person that says, I have wisdom, doesn't know what wisdom is. So nobody has it. And therefore, we all need to work on spirituality. So to feel that, you know what, I'm not complete, I am not so great in the spiritual world, that's not bad. That is not so terrible. That's a good thing. Halavai, all our depression was because we're not spiritually good. That we need to be spiritually better. So that's like kind of jealousy. Jealousy is a terrible thing. But to be jealous of wisdom, that I should be jealous to motivate me to learn more, that's a great jealousy. Person shouldn't say, you know what, I'm happy with my knowledge. Oh, I don't care somebody who's smarter than me. I'm happy with my knowledge. No, you should always be inspired by somebody who's smarter than you to say, you know what, I'm going to work harder to be smart, to be smarter. So I mentioned chapter 1, over here, Klippas Noiga contains both good and evil. The evil of Noiga is a source of ordinary depression. So there is a positive, just like there's jealousy is terrible, but it's a positive jealousy. Depression is terrible, but there is a depression where it is a positive. Being depressed of being less spiritual. The Jewish people are in gullus. We are in a mode of depression, a little bit. Because why? Not because of tzaddis, because we're separate from God. We are separate. We don't have revelation of godliness, and we should be We should feel that depression, that we don't have revelation of God. And that should be our depression. That should be our anxiety. Where is God? Yet even the element of good contained in Noga, after all, is Klippa. But ultimately, you're right, this depression is maybe good, but still not totally good. Because depression is not good. So even depression of a good depression, a good sadness, you have to be careful even with a good sadness, because that's the beginning of a bad sadness. That's the negative of Klippas Nega. Klippas Nega means a covering that shines. A covering that shines brings you ultimately to a covering that doesn't shine. You should not be involved in any covering. That's why we pray to God. We don't want gullus. We don't want any coverings. Why? Because ultimately coverings bring to bigger coverings. And a good depression can bring to a bad depression. So therefore, you have to be careful even with the depression and suppression of oneself, even in Klippas Noiga, even the concept where it is needed. So the Alter Rebbe said, I told you, you should have a contrite heart, not a whole day. You should make a time, as he's going to say now. You need to make a time for that. This reason, the Arizal writes that even worry over one sin is appropriate only during confession. That's why we do confession every day in davening, vidui. We say al-chet, ashamnu bagadnu. So put all your confessions and all your frustrations of the separation of sin in that prayer. The whole prayer should be done with simcha. Then they put in the prayer a time to look in the mirror and say, you know what? Ashamnu, I'm a sinner. Bagadnu, gazalnu, dabarnu, whatever we say in our prayer. So here, even though I had great joy, but then I say to myself, listen, I got to work on myself. I'm still a work in progress. Still got to get better because I'm far away from God. And that alone shows that I need to get better. But not b'shas hatfilah. But to use that to even clip a depression of godliness in the time of davening or in the time of learning, never. That's no good even then. So when it comes to learning, to davening, or the Alter Rebbe says even when you're working, to have that depression that I'm separate from God. Oh, suddenly I feel this separation of God. I'm going to be depressed. No, it's not the right time. Why? Because you have to be in a joyful situation. So when you come and learn, how are you going to learn if you're going to be depressed? Any kind of, even a positive depression, so to say. How are you going to learn if you're in a moment? I'm far from God. That's not the time. We need to learn. We need to be joy. We need to daven. We need to be in joy. So not the time. Because now we're in holiness. Oh, but this is also holy. No, there's holiness that's pure holy, and that's joy. God doesn't reside but in a place of joy. And then there's holiness that a person needs to sit and say, you know what? How holy I am, I'm far from the essence of holiness. I'm far from what I can be holy. And that's sad that I could be holier, and my animalistic soul is holding me back from being holy. So how holy I am, I can always be holy. That's the Jewish expression. As good is besser nicht besser. If good is better, not better. You always can be better. That's why a person should never be happy with his lot in holiness. He should be happy with his lot in the physical world, but never ever be happy with your spiritual journey. You always need to be better. So when then should one strive to crush his spirit and sitach with methods that lead to depression, which itself stems from sitach, which is not totally good. It is good because there's an agenda. See, you have to always have an agenda when it comes, especially to sadness and to suppress yourself. It needs to be an agenda, not just, I'm nothing. They say expression, don't be so humble, you're not so great. So there's not always, I'm nothing. No, there's a time to say I'm nothing. And it needs to be battled and put into a certain situation. Why? Because there needs to be an agenda. I'm nothing, and therefore I need to motivate myself. Just like there's a time for anger. Anger is a terrible thing, but you need to be anger on a negative thing. If you're not going to get angry, you're never going to change it. There's a time and place for everything. And the truth is, happiness needs to be 24/7. Anger, there's a time and place. Even the Gemara says the Eibishter, so to say, gets angry at a certain time of the day. Anger needs to be a specific time. Simcha is unlimited. Anger and frustration and this kind of even sadness and contriteness needs to be in a certain, it needs to be done at a specific situation, at a specific time. You ready? And because why? Because there needs to be an agenda. Anger and sadness and depression for the sake of sadness, that's no good. That's not a good because there's no gain. Yet it's precisely the method of humbling the Sitra Achra through something of its own species and kind. Meaning, the Sitra Achra is most effectively attacked by utilizing a good contained within it as a weapon against itself. You need to find within that negative to use it out against negative. Again, because you cannot attack negative from the outside. It's never going to change. You need to attack negativity from the inside. As the sages say, Minei Ubei, from the forest itself comes the handle, the axe, which fills the forest. Where does the hack come to cut the forest down? From the forest. Because it comes from the wood. How do you make an axe? Expression in Talmud. Why is the forest complaining when the axe comes to chop it down? You give it the wood. You gave it the wood to chop you down. So too, in a similar vein, he encountered one of his own kind. You got to find within the the negative, a positive. And what does that mean? And this is the meaning of the verse, where we said before, we mentioned this statement before. This sadness resulting from contemplating one spiritual state is written, B'chol eitzev yeh moiseh. In every sadness, there will be profit. In essence, you and I are not to be sad unless I know before the sadness that I'm going to have profit. It's very important. Sadness for the sake of sadness, there's no profit. And you should get rid of it. But if you can get ready for the sadness, that you know the profit that you're going to get from this moment of sadness, that's a positive sadness. Because it's not about the sadness, it's about the profit. And what is that? That is the joy that comes after the sadness. So in essence, when I say every morning Ashamnu, I say to God, I'm sad because I know God forgives me. Right? So I know that there's a positive in going before God and saying, I'm sorry. Because I know the second I say I'm sorry, God says, okay, I forgive you. This is a great greatness, but I have to be humility. God understands. You're not just coming and doing lip talk. So you feel contrite, you bang your heart, you put your head down, you turn to God and say, listen, I'm a low person, I'm having Efesha Bahamis, I have an animal soul, Ashamnu, but God, no, I went against you. And then God says, I forgive you. Now I'm happy. So there's there's not that I'm just saying I'm nothing, I'm a God, I'm a terrible person. No, I want to have a contrite heart. I want to break my animalistic soul, and therefore I beg God to forgive me. And God says, sure, I forgive you. Now I'm happy. So that is the concept. So when, for example, even to another person, when I hurt somebody else, and I'm gonna call him to the side, I'm gonna beg him forgiveness. I'm gonna show my humility to the person. I'm gonna say how sorry I am that I've hurt him. Even if I don't feel I hurt him, but he feels I hurt him. So I'm gonna humble myself to ask forgiveness from another person. And what's the point? The point is that the other person is going to respond, okay, I accept your apology. And now we're going to start over. It's not that I'm going to be humble. I'm going to humility myself for the other person. No gain. No gain is no gain. Then why are you doing that for? That's what even in halacha, you have to ask a person 3 times. Forgiveness. If he says ultimately no, the sin goes on him. You're not obligated to ask forgiveness forever and ever. You go to a person, you contrite, and you ask him forgiveness. He should forgive you. And now you can be back to the way it was. So there's a gain. The Alter Rebbe says, in truth, however, the state of being contrite of heart and bitter soul, meaning remorseful, from the remoteness from God. Really, the aspect of a sin between us and God, and even between us and somebody else, is really you have to understand. What is the sin? The sin is not that I did something bad. That's a second. The sin is the separation. That's the pain. The pain is not the action. The pain is the separation. Can be, it can be nikroim over the fact that one's soul is closed in sitra. When I did a sin, what I do, I separate myself from God. What do I connect myself? I connect myself to something that's totally opposite of God. That's not atzvus. The kroyim b'shem atzvus can by no means be described in the holy tongue as a term of atzvus. Atzvus is usually what we translate as depression, meaning melancholy, stems from the root of means of constricted. In this context, it refers to a numbing depression that constricts one's heart, blocking out all feeling, as the Alter Rebbe continues. So when a person feels that he's separate from God, actually has a positive. When our atzvus, when our sadness, that's what the Alter Rebbe is going to call atzvus. When our sadness is from our separation from God, brings about a positive response. It's the other thing, atzvus, depression, that actually has a negative effect. The more depressed I am, the more I become indifferent, the more I become secluded. That's what happens with depression. People that are depressed become secluded. They become dull. We're not looking for that. Chas v'shalom. And not only you're not looking for that, we're looking for sadness, which brings happiness. The sadness of being separate from God brings happiness. So you can really say, in essence, we are sad. Not because, even in a fight between one person and another person, we're not sad on the separation, we're sad on the action. That's what that's what brings us to problems. Because once we have an action of total separation, now it's hard to come back together. We should both be sad on the separation, and that's what brings us back together. If we were truly sad on the separation of the relationship, we'd come back together. It would force us to come back together. Because it's not the action that's important. It's the separation that's important. Because atzvus, depression, means that one's heart is dull as a stone, and there's no vitality, arousal, or feeling in his heart, because he's basically cut off. I hurt you, finished, it's over. How can we come back together? You hurt me. But the bitterness and contriteness of the heart, that the opposite, I feel the separation. How can I be separate from you? I know I did something wrong to you, but now I feel that this relationship is broken. That's what really is bothering me more, and we're both bothered by it. God is not bothered. God is more bothered by the separation than by the action. Look at it. The action's the moment. The separation can be a lifetime. Two people can hurt each other in a moment, and now they don't talk to each other for 30 years. So what's the pain? That one moment of action or the 30 years of separation? That should be the pain. And if our pain would be in separation, we would come back together. And because our pain is not in separation, we don't feel the pain of separation. That's how we know. That's how it can be 30, 40 years. We won't come back together. When a person is contrite, there's bitterness of that the separation. I've separated from God. Hashamnu. If I'm a sinner, how can I be with you? So it's Hashamnu. I hurt you. It's not about the self-understood. We need to fix the action, but it's really the response of the action. I love you. See, it's a concept of base of love. If I said I hurt you and finish, I'm over, then we have walked away from each other. You should never walk away from each other, from one another, and surely from God. We should feel how far we from God, and especially through our sins, how far we have gone from God, how far this relationship is breaking. It moves in bitterment in sign of life. It's itself a sign of life. That's a sign of life. I feel I have an ava to you and to God, and this ava is shaking. This love is being torn apart. Except the vitality derives from the holy attributes of severity, and therefore express itself as bitterness. So that's what really it's ava. The truth is that I am embittered because I don't have a love, and that's the opposite. That's what I am bitter because I have love. If I didn't care about the relationship, I wouldn't have any bitterness. So that I am embittered of the breakage of the relationship because I have love you, because I love God. So really, it comes from chesed. So the reason why I am embittered is because I have chesed. That's where, with every situation, there is gain. Because if I can fix this relationship, the love is going to be even deeper. Because we have made it through this reality. We made it through this physical challenge. Because the heart has ava and yira. The heart has bitterness and joy. So that's where ava, love, comes from bitterness. So that's where you find the solution in the problem. The problem is the bitterness, and the bitterness that came from love, and therefore the solution is love. And that's the trick. So therefore you need to do this. You need to have this bitterness of our distance from God, our relationship that needs to be worked on. Like any relationship in life needs to be worked on. Because every relationship can be deeper, and in the human world, and surely between us and God, the relationship can be deeper. right? At any rate, we see thus such a dejection accompanying one's disappointment with a spiritual situation stems from the relevant love of home. It stems from love. It doesn't stem from negative. It stems from love. Because I love the Eibishter, that's why I feel that I'm so far from him. Because I know who I am. Unlike Atzvus, which derives from Klippa negative, Atzvus, which comes. At times, one must arouse. So one, from time to time, person needs to arouse this attribute of severity on himself to say, you know what? I need to be better. I need to work on myself. In order to temper, sweeten the stern judgments. Because really it is sweet. It comes from sweetness. And that's what's called in Kabbalah, Chassidus, Hamtakas Adinim, to sweeten judgment. Sweeten it. What means to bring out the sweetness of judgment, because every judgment really has sweetness. It's called, like we get expression today, a tough love. A parent's admonishment or judgment of a child is out of love. It's not out of. If it's not out of love, then it's sick. Then there's a problem. But every parent loves his child, and sometimes needs to admonish the child. So the chokhmah is that the child should feel that it's not out of gevura, even though it is gevura, it's sternness, but it's out of love. And therefore, it's not going to bring negative, it's only going to bring positive. That's why it says in different expressions, every person should love admonishment. Actually, admonishment makes you who you are. People don't like to be admonished. People don't like to be told they're not good. But you know what? Imagine if you didn't have a good friend who would tell you that you need to be better. If you cannot do it to yourself, you cannot say to yourself whatever a person loves himself, and he cannot say to himself once in a while, I'm not so good. But somebody will be able to tell him, listen, I love you, and you need to be better. Why not be better? So therefore, you need to, if you don't, you need, every one of us needs to once in a while look in the mirror and admonish themselves. And have a little gevura on themselves, because the truth is, it's not from gevura, it's not severity, it is severity that has within it great love, great love. And that's the way you do on Tokas Adin, that's the way you sweeten. Which is in the concept that knows the animal soul, and the evil inclination, whenever the latter dominates a man, God forbid. Ki ein hadinim, this is an important rule. Ki ein hadinim metaka ela b'sharsh. For stern judgments, meaning restraints from one's spiritual well-being, can be only sweetened by the means of its source. All evil is simply a denigrated form of the attribute of severity that derives from the realm of holiness. Everything that happens in the world, this is the class that we're going through, in meditation, everything comes from Kedusha. Everything comes from God. So everything comes from holiness. So how is it negative? Because it comes through tzimtzumim. It comes through many contractions that sends from the attribute, transforms it to evil. So ultimately, everything comes from holiness, but as it comes from level to level, and when it reaches this world, it's packaged in evil. But really, it stands for Kedusha. It stands for a holy place. Like Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov and Esav, one is holy, one is unholy. Both of them come from Yitzchak. The evil of the clipper. Naturally, this includes also sitracha of one's animal soul. and his evil impulse. It comes also from holiness. Everything comes from your God, from the Kedusha. Nothing comes from nowhere. So even evil, right, comes from holiness. Right? This is hard to sometimes comprehend because it's so far away from its source that we see only evil. But really, nothing evil comes from above. So in its source, it is holy. The problem is it's so far from its source that it's seemingly the opposite. So how do we bring about to rectify this evil? You have to go back to its source. So in order to elevate or sweeten evil, to return evil to the realm of holiness, it's necessary to bring its source, to bear on it. In terms of one's divine service, this means crushing one's evil's impulse by miriros, bitter remorse, which derives its vitality for the holy attribute of severity, the source of the evil impulse. So this is the trick. The trick is not to wait till somebody else tells you you're not a good person. That's when it hurts. Do it to yourself. Look and be honest with yourself. Start working on yourself. That's what the Frierdiker Rebbe said. When somebody tells you a negative thing, if it's true, it's true. What are you getting angry for? It's true. If it's not true, you should have mercy. You should pray for that person that's saying not true. But if it's true, it's true. So why wait for a person to tell you the truth? Or somebody to tell you the truth? Or somebody to find out the truth? I need to right now go to the Gevura where the severity, where it's in Kedusha yet, and work on it now. Because if not, and it will be revealed, then it will be rough. That's when it gets rough. So when it's revealed, and somebody tells me, now it's revealed, I'm more angry at that it became revealed than on the negative. If I was so angry and negative, I would work on my negativity. But I'm not working on my negativity. I'm angry and it was revealed. Somebody knows I'm not a good person. Somebody actually told somebody else. And that's what we said before. Therefore, our sages said, a person should incite the good inclination to anger against the evil inclination. To anger. I get angry on myself. Not to get angry on somebody else. I should ready preventive medicine. Time to get angry on myself. So then I'll rectify it. Nobody will, and I can rectify it. I fix it. So not to wait till somebody else tells me now I get angry at him. A person should always get angry at himself, so to say. Say, listen, I need to fix the situation. So this anger is good. This is a good anger. Getting angry at somebody else is evil. Getting angry at oneself is a very good anger because it's going to fix it. Because it's an anger with a gain. So since anger stands for the attribute of severity, it's capable of sweetening the evil. That's the way I sweeten the evil. So I use out the evil inclination to fix the evil inclination. I use out anger, which is the evil inclination, to fix my own evil inclination. The word always, be careful, is however to be understood, the qualified sense, joy, not severity, is usually the proper setting of divine service. Thus, when our sages state that one should always incite good against evil, it means whenever he finds it necessary for himself. For example, when one sees the arrogance of his animal soul does not permit the light of divine soul to penetrate the heart, causing him tizvalev, when one feels that he's coming indifferent, now it's time to get angry. However, in an appropriate time for this anger. So the Alter Rebbe says, I'm going to give you a time. Shouldn't be an open-ended issue. It's not good to get angry at yourself on a constant basis and be bittered about my negative things I am. You have to make a time which is appropriate and fitting for most people. Is when one is in case depressed over mundane matters. Or just depressed without any reason. Now is the time to do it. Now is because that's really the depression over Nadishkeit is Nadish. Now is the time. You're ready in a moment of depression. You're ready in a moment of contemplation. Now contemplate what is really the issue. And the real issue is I'm far from God, which is bringing me about. And therefore I have Gevuris, and that's why I have depression. And that's why I have all negative things. So now is the time to think of the real issue. And then not only not only will I sweeten everything, I'll even sweeten the Gevuris, the physical aspects of depression. So we mentioned, meaning engage in soul searching and spiritual stacking. And then you will accomplish, you will do what the sages taught us. A person should always incite his good inclination against his evil inclination, since both of these pass hardest attributes of severity. And that's the trick. By when a person gets depressed or he's sad, he should right away mix in the real sadness and depression comes from his separation of God. And then when he sweetens up severity, he'll not only sweeten up severity, spiritual severity, he'll sweeten even up physical severities. Then he will get rid of depression brought about by mundane matters. So meaning, redirecting his depression, when a person is depressed anyway, to redirect her to a spiritual depression will get rid of your spiritual depression and your mundane depression. What a great teaching. And then what's going to happen? What's going to happen? You're going to come to simcha mitis. You come to real joy. In order to comfort one heart's a double measure. In the words that I've just, true words which I have just told you. So this is a comfort. The comfort is dual. Not only is depression eliminated, but will also attain a joy which he would never experience were it not before depressed. How do you claim that? To say to his heart, who came believe suffix, you know what? Indeed, without any doubt. I am so far from God, like I just got depressed. I am so far from God. Meshukit, I'm a despicable person. Mesuv, I'm a contemptible person, and so on. You know what? But nevertheless, hu ani levadi. But all this is true only of me. What means of me? Hu aguf is my body. And nefesh and my animal soul that's in it. But nevertheless, in all this despicability and all this degrading, yesh Hashem, I'm nevertheless a part of God. Mamash. That I am a part of God in theory. Mamash in reality. Yesh nafil b'kala, even though I'm going to stay, I'm the lowest of lowest, I'm still a part of God. She nefesh elakis, which is my godly soul. In nitzis elakis, which is the spirit, which is the spark of God, mamish. The Rebbe says mamish twice in this paragraph. Mamish, really. That clothes itself to give its life. It's there, really. So why don't I feel it? It should be gullus, because it's an exile within me. And so if so, Adrab, on the contrary, Kol mashani betachas arichim Hashem, the more I'm removed from God, and the more despicable and contemptible I am, then the deeper exile is my godly soul. I should have mercy on my godly soul. So what is the purpose of this sadness? To make me more sad? To reveal my godly soul? That should be the agenda. Therefore, I won't. This is the Alter Rebbe saying, I'm talking to my animal soul. This is what you have to say to myself. I'm talking bad, I'm talking nothing, I'm talking far from God. But you know what? I have a godly soul. And the more I'm far from God, the more my godly soul is far from God. Whoa! That's sad that my godly soul is so far from God. I have to now create a mercy on this godly soul. I need to reattach the godly soul. I need to redeem my godly soul. Imagine a person's in jail and you can help it. Who would not help it? Who would not help a person that's in jail that you can help? My godly soul's in jail and I can help it. Which person would not help it? To return it to its father, Kinura, as it was in its youth. My godly soul's within me. I need to get it out of Gullus. I need to create a mercy upon it. Before this godly soul came into my body, it was at the table of his father. When it was in heaven, before it came into my body, it was part of God. And now it's in my body. It's in jail. And I've created either a deeper jail and a deeper jail. You should realize that depression does create a deep jail for this neshama. None of my body is in darkness. My soul is in darkness. The truth is that the Alter Rebbe is telling us over here how to get out of bodily darkness is to go to the soul, reveal the soul. Not only will your soul get out of darkness, your body will get out of darkness. We need to rectify the soul. Everybody is willing to rectify the body. We need to rectify the soul. But you might say, my body that's in darkness and my soul that's in my body that's in darkness, maybe there's no way to rectify it. But that's not true. Because this soul that's in darkness is the same soul that was not in darkness. So this soul is still a part of God, how dark it is. And now too, even though it's in my body, that's so dark, it's still part of God. It's likewise been absorbed and united with Him once again. Also, when I'll concentrate all my aspirations, because that's what my godly soul needs, Torah and mitzvahs. I can free the godly soul. And that's important. That's important by doing good. By doing good, I redeem. The more I learn, the more I do good, the more I will reveal my godly soul. Some people think they need to become perfect before they can do good. No. The more I do good, the more I will become perfect. Because I'm revealing my God, I'm giving my godly soul breath. I'm giving my godly soul oxygen. I'm giving my godly soul life. So now the godly soul can clothe itself in its garments. And especially fulfilling the mitzvah of prayer. What's prayer? Prayer is in the heart. To cry out to God in prayer, in the pain of the soul. Migalusa, to give the soul its freedom. Be gufi hameshuketz from his loathsome body. To take this godly soul out of jail. To cleave it to God. That's why the Rebbe says in a couple of days ago, he says, most of us, the tefillah is a very powerful thing that the sages put together, and there's many kavanot, contemplations and meditations and prayer. And most of us don't have that understanding in meditation or prayer. And understand, but the best meditation of prayer, the Rebbe says, is to know you're praying to God. That's the best way to pray ultimately. You're praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're opening up your heart and your mind to God. That's the best meditation you can have. And that's ultimately all the meditations that the great sages had. It was all the same thing, but it was all through different dimensions, but it's all ultimately the same thing. We're praying to God. To pray to God gives my soul the greatest freedom. And that's why even the soul, the Mishnah says, that Yafa Sha'achas is being honest. It's better for 1 hour of the soul of good deeds. Tshuva, repentance, might tell you, than all the world to come. Because a soul that davens here, a soul that prays here, a soul that says Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba here. Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba is part of the Kaddish. I brought that up because then if a person says Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba, the Gemara says Talmud says a person says Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba with all his might, he breaks decrees of 70 years. Doesn't realize one Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba. So the Rebbe writes also that in one of the Yom Yoms a couple of days ago, that the souls, all the angels, are so the desire of one Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba of a Jew here in this world. They're jealous. They would love to say Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba. The Alter Rebbe said that once, and it says in the Yom Yom, the Rebbe writes, says that for the next year, that the Chassidim the Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba was in a higher that year. When the Alter Rebbe said that you can't imagine the angels and the souls above that are dying, they would wish to say one Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba, what a Jew says in this world. This is the service of God which one seeks to restore a soul, referring to tshuva and good deeds. So let's go to the explanation. This caused the Talmudic expression noting the mitzvahs and a statement: 1 hour of tshuva and good deeds in this world is better than all the life of the world to come. First glance, this two seems. How do you put the two? Tshuva deals with atoning one's past imperfection. Good deeds are performed at the present and would seem to bear no relation to one's past. But according to Alter Rebbe's statement, however, one's performance of mitzvah should be motivated by the desire to return a soul to its source within God. The connection between the two is clear. The good deeds themselves actually constitute tshuva, which means return. And that's what Chassidus teaches us, that we need to do a mitzvah for the sake of heaven, for God. It's not about the good deed. It's not about what the accomplishment of good deed. The purpose is the relationship. And that's tshuva. Tshuva is the concept, my love of the relationship. And that's why I do repentance, because I want a relationship. So everything is about the relationship with God. And that shouldn't be the focus in anything in life. It's about the relationship, where it's a relationship between each other, Avas Yisrael, love of one another, or it's a relationship between us and God. And therefore we should do for each other, and we should never hurt each other. And so too, therefore we should do every mitzvah, and we should never hurt each other. And therefore, if we do hurt each other, that should be our focus, that tshuva, to create that relationship. Toshav Hey, we create the relationship. That should be the focus. If we had that concept of recreating relationships, forget about the negative that happened. No, forget the negative happened. Negative happened. We're humans, and negative is going to happen. But it's the relationship. We need to work on the relationship. Whatever happens, we need to reconnect. And then the service of a person is besimcha rabba, with great joy. Because this service is the joy of the soul when it goes out of the body, when the soul is revealed. The soul had its connection. And he returns to his father, like his young youth, surely in a time of learning, in a time of davening. Wow, it's revealed, it's free. It's free. As our sages say, a person should always be in the mode of tshuva. A person should always be in the mode of tshuva. It's not a time, it's not a certain situation. Tshuva should be always. We want the relationship. We always want to go higher. We always want to touch it. We want to turn to its source. How high we are, our source is higher. How much a relationship we have, our relationship can be deeper, surely with God. And therefore, who would not want to have a deeper relationship? And therefore, every step I go forward, I create a greater joy. There's no greater joy from going out of exile and captivity. Take example of a child that was a child of a king, a prince that was in prison. And he was turning a millstone in prison while covered with filth. And then he's released. He comes out, a base of it, to return to his father's house. Can you imagine such a thing? Even though the body might stay in its place. A serpent skin. So you didn't change who you were. You just let your soul free. Because I'm still a Beinoni, I'm not a tzaddik. Through this whole situation, I've not become a righteous person. So my body, my physicality has maybe not moved that much, because it has not been changed to good. As explained above, the Beinoni may indeed elevate the garments of the animal soul, the thought, the speech, and action through which express itself by performing mitzvahs and by means of his thought, speech, and action, but the essential character of the animal soul, its intellectual and emotional faculties, remain subject to the realm of klippas nega. How then can he expect to rejoice, knowing that his body and his soul are still in such an undesirable state? Yet let his divine soul be more precious to him. To be happy with the godly soul more than the body, and rejoice in the soul's joy. Don't mix the sadness of the body to the joy of the soul. And that's the divine service of every day going out of Egypt. When the Jews went out of Egypt, it said, Ki baracham, they ran, they escaped. Let your soul escape. The Jew told Pharaoh that would leave Pharaoh only for 3 days, but upon being released from his land, they escaped. They ran for their lives. At first glance, it's very strange. Why did it have to be in such a manner that they ran out of Mitzrayim? Had they demanded from Pharaoh to set them free forever, would he not have been forced to do so? Why did they have to say 3 days? That's a general question. Why did they have to say we're going for 3 days? Why couldn't they say we're going forever? That was the truth. Why did they have to keep on saying, Moshe, keep on saying 3 days, let us go for 3 days. Let us go for Yontiv. We're coming back. Why? Why do you think about that? In essence, he lied. He said a lie. He said to the Pharaoh, we're going for 3 days. Now you understand why the Pharaoh ran after him. What do you mean? You're going for 3 days. You're 7 days later. You're not back. You lied. Because this is a lesson to all of us. The Pharaoh didn't change. Mitzrayim didn't change. The body's not going to change. You have to tell the body, I need freedom. And then run. I need freedom. And keep on running. That's how about tshuva is freedom. But don't fall into the rut. Keep on running. Because the body, the Pharaoh, is right behind you. He's running right behind you. Because the Pharaoh says, what do you mean? You don't say you need freedom. Come back, come back. I gave you freedom. Come back. And you're not coming back. So that's the same thing. Going out of Mitzrayim every day is telling your body, give me an hour, let me free, let me daven, stop bothering me, let me connect to God. Give me an hour, and then try to drag it on. Try to take that hour of freedom and drag it to 2 hours, and 3 hours, and 4 hours, and 5 hours. Keep the joy of the mitzvah. That's what you should always do. Learn b'simcha. Don't learn out of depression. Learn b'simcha, daven b'simcha, and hopefully that joy will go for even after you daven. Will continue. Because why? Because you're gonna run. You're gonna run with it. Why? Because if not, you're going back to the body. You're going back to the Pharaoh. You're going back to jail. Okay, because my escape was necessary because the evil animal soul of Israel was still strong in left part of the heart. Because their impurity did not cease until the giving of the Torah. That's why they were running. That's why they kept on traveling. Actually, in the story of going every day, they didn't stop for 3 days. The Jewish people didn't stop. The Eibishter didn't want us to stop. Keep on running. That their aim and desire was that the divine soul leave the exile of the impurity of Egypt and cleave to God. As written, there is a divine service which consists of the divine soul escape from the purity of the body and animal soul. God is my strength and my fortress, my refuge, my day in the day of affliction. He is my high power tower and my refuge. He is my escape. That all happens in Gullus. Every day I have to feel I'm going out of Mitzrayim. I'm getting out of Mitzrayim. I have to run. Because the Mitzrayim, because you can take a Jew out of Mitzrayim, but you can't take Mitzrayim out of him. You can take the Gullus, you can take a Jew out of Gullus, but the problem is the Gullus is still in him. But when Mashiach comes, that's when there's going to be a transformation. Mashiach comes and God, over there the prophet says, God will take impurity away from the world. Then it says, you're not, right? You will not go out in haste. So that's going to be the difference. When Mashiach, the time of Mitzrayim, we ran. But when Mashiach comes, we will go first class. There won't be any rush because we're not going to be running from anywhere. There's not going to be the Pharaoh that's going to be chasing us. So the exodus, however, took place in a manner of flight, for the evil is still strong in the people's animal soul. Similarly, whenever one disregards the lowness of his body and the animal soul, engage in Torah mitzvahs in order to free his divine soul from the corporal exile, he affects the spiritual equivalent of going out of Egypt. Because, my friend, we're going to sooner or later go back to the body. So therefore, today in Gullus, we need to be one may lend his tshuva, the restoration of a soul, an additional strength from the depths of his heart, the gam simchas hanefesh, and add a greater measure of light and joy to the joy of his soul, brought about on tshuva. Kasher Yosef el libe, when he's going to take to his heart, das usvuna, from its distress and sorrow, through reflecting, speaking to the heart with knowledge and understanding as follows. Hein emes, it is true. Talk to you, tell your animal soul. Ach ani lo yasisi zeh, ani lo yasisi es atzmi. It is true. I said above, I'm truly remote from God. But it's not I who created myself. In a manner that permitted the divine soul to be exiled within impurity of the body, and Adam's soul, it was God who created me thus. Gullus, to eradicate impurity from the world is God. God needs to eradicate. That's what the verse said, that God will eradicate impurity. Who gave me an animal soul? God. Who gave me a Yetzer Hara? God. Lama asaz Hashem kacha. Why did God do this thing? To cause the divine soul, a part of his light, which fills and encompasses all the world, and before which all is naught, to descend into a body, which is clothed in a serpent skin and a tipa srucha, a putrid drop. Why would God do that? I didn't do that. I didn't give myself an animal soul. I didn't give myself a body that has desires and has all temptations and all these things. I did not do that. So why would God do that? The only reason, because the descent is for an ascent. To elevate to God the entire animating animal soul, which is derived from klippas noiga, and to the garments of thought, speech, and action. Through clothing them in the action, speech, and thought of Torah. As the subject will be discussed further at length, because this is the whole purpose of creation. If this is so, there's nothing for me to do. And this shall be my sole aim throughout life. To immerse in my thought, speech, and action of Torah mitzvahs. As it says, a lech Hashem nafshi eser, the life, my spirit, of the soul. God, you God, I raise my soul. In particular terms, this means to bind my thought and my speech with God, thought and speech, which are in fact the very law which has been set before us. For the laws of the Torah are God's thought and speech, and by studying them, one binds his faculty of thought and speech with divine counterparts. The Chaim Maisa, similarly with the action, the Maisa mitzvahs, through performing a mitzvah. For this reason, the Torah describes as one which restores my soul. Restores the soul to its source and its root. And on this verse says, Hashem. Moreover, consider this occupation of Torah and the mitzvahs, which brings joy to the soul by restoring it to its source, and which banishes the sadness of its exile in the body and animal soul. It's written, God's commandments are just, they gladden the heart. So we'll end this off when one considers that one's Torah study and observance of mitzvah elevate not only his divine soul, but also his body, his animal soul. His tshuva will gain depth, and the joy of his soul will gain intensity. For although his soul escapes from exile within the body, and the animal soul, spoken earlier, would in itself be sufficient to cause great joy, running away from gullus would give you unbelievable joy. Yet this joy is tempered by sadness over the lowly state in which one's body and animal soul remain. When one realizes, however, that Torah mitzvahs elevate the body and animal soul as well, his joy will be untarnished. My friends, we can complete it, I believe, the whole chapter 31 of Tanya. So, as you know, Wednesday is the long day of Tanya. So today we did a whole chapter. It's a phenomenal chapter of Tanya. The ups and downs of the Alter Rebbe, today's chapter, is just amazing. Today, the 22nd day of the month, which is chapter 106 and 107. And if you do 106 and 107, you've accomplished the chitas of the day. I want to wish you all a great, phenomenal day, a happy day, a healthy day, and a mitzvah. We'll see you all tomorrow at 8 a.m. Tomorrow we have a triple header at 8 a.m., 10 a.m., and 7:30 p.m. So it's a long day. We'll see you all tomorrow, Mitcham, at 8 a.m., where we're going to continue the chitas of the day.